This conference will now
The
be
volume is
recorded.
getting low actually.
Is it okay now? Is it okay now?
It
Is
is okay for
Yeah,
us
am I
now.
audible to everyone?
Yeah, it
It is
is
okay for
clear
us
for
now.
me.
I'm sorry. Yes. Is it clear? Am I good to go ahead?
It is clear for us now. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Yes. Anyone, any questions before I get started? Any questions that I can take before we can get started? So we were looking at loops. We said what is string, what is array, what is a loop. How do you, let's say, mention a loop out here? And then we went ahead and said, in this particular loop, how do you do a for loop? How do you do a for each loop and so on and so forth out here as such? So anyone, any questions that I can take till here?
Audio hardware detected. Go to meeting dialog. Use new.
Just a second. Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, I have some error. I sent your mail. You
Sir,
cannot
you
reply.
sent me an email, but I did not really get a screenshot or anything. Like I saw the email, but I did not really get a screenshot. I did not really get any details out here. I saw your email. I think this one, right? Sir, how do I know whether what is your error really is from your screen? I mean, there is no screenshot or anything, right? If
Sir,
you
అవును
want me to
సార్
resolve, sir, this is the
స్క్రీన్ షాట్
email that I got. So this is the only email that I got.
అవును సార్ అవును సార్ పెట్టాను సార్ స్క్రీన్
So
షాట్ కూడా
no, sir, I do
బిఫోర్
not
సార్
see any.
దీనికంటే ముందు వచ్చింది దీనికంటే ముందు ఒకటి వచ్చింది చూడండి సార్ అది
No, sir, I did not get an email before this one. This is the only email that I got. I
ఓకే
don't
ఓకే
think I got an email. Please send it across to me on a screenshot. I thought I'll reply to this, but I forgot about that. Please send me across with a screenshot so that I can reply back. Okay.
ఓకే ఓకే
Yes. All right.
Hi,
So
Kiran.
let's. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Kiran, last week, Srinath was asked one question. In that, it was printing up to 999 only. It's not printing 1000. But in the before scenario, it was printing up to 1000.
Okay. You mean a for loop? If that's right.
Yeah. For loop. Yeah.
So you're getting
And
up
the
to
only statement,
999, not. Mhm.
yeah. If you mention the statement below that, it is printing up to
Right.
1000. If you
Right.
mention
But.
above the right host, yeah, it is
Mhm.
printing up to 999 only. So what is the difference in
Okay.
between?
Okay, firstly, let's see. If you are giving it, firstly, you have to give me your command on how you are writing it. You
Yeah.
can give your command on how you are writing it, then I can tell you what exactly is the difference, why you are getting it, let's say up to 999 only, and the second case, why you are getting up to 1000 before right host and after right host out there as such.
Yeah.
So you can just send me across what exactly that you're trying to do. Then I'll be able to, let's say, better tell you on what is exactly happening out here as such.
Now starting with a for loop. So dollar $i is equal to 0 and colon
That's
dollar
fine.
$i equal
Send
to.
me an email. Send me an email,
Okay.
please. If you send me an
Okay.
email on what exactly that you're trying, then I'll be able to properly respond back to it.
And I already shown on Friday actually. So
Okay.
in the last moment, you're saying that it was printing up to 1000. And if
Okay.
you mention the statement above the right host, it is printing up to 999 only.
Okay. See,
So
if you write the statement or if you write the condition above the right host, we are also
yeah.
giving something called as break, right? We
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
if I is equal to something like 1000 or I is equal to something like 999, we said break. So when it's
Oh,
breaking, it won't go into your right host statement at all. So it won't print that 1000 at all. It's coming to 999. Yes, it's coming to 1000 also, but it's telling it's equal to
okay.
1000. I'll break the statement. I won't write it. That's it. But if you first write, do a write host and then write that particular if statement, it's writing that
Okay.
1000 and then going to the if statement and then breaking the loop. So where
Okay.
the loop is getting broken, that's important. Where the loop
Okay.
basically is getting broken, that's very important out here as such.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let's get into, let's say, let's see my system. Okay. Let's look at this. Now, if I go into something called as my system, let's look at something called as task manager. What really happens out here is that this tells me what are all the backend processes that are running in my system. For example, I have a Google Chrome browser. It's also telling me, let's say, what is this memory that is occupying, and what is, let's say, for example, I have the GoToMeeting application open. It is telling all, let's say, these are the processes that are running in the background. Apart from this, I also have something called services that are running in the background. These are all the services that are running as a part of my system, and each and every service, right, is helping me do some kind of a functionality. Like there is a service for sound, there's something like this, and etc. So I can just see the service, I can see what is the status of the service. There are some services which are running, there's some services just stopped. There are a couple of things that are happening in the background out here as such. What I want to do is that I want to get the same information using PowerShell. I don't want to touch my system. I don't want to go into the task manager, get those things out here, etc. So on and so forth. I want to, let's say, get all my services that are running in the background using my PowerShell. So getting all services using PowerShell. This is what I want to do out here right now. Now, in order to do this, I would like to run a command called get. Firstly, to get something, it is get. To change something, it is set. For example, we said get hyphen execution policy to get the execution policy. Set hyphen execution policy to change what is existing.
Hello?
Hello?
I'm
Sir,
not able to hear.
Your
I'm
voice
not
is
able
not
to hear.
audible.
Okay, sorry. My speakers for some reason got into mute. Is it okay now? Is everyone able to hear me?
yes, sir,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I was telling that if I run this command called get hyphen service, I'll just run this out once again. I'll do a clear screen. I'll just run this command once again. And what it does is that it now goes ahead, gets all the services that are running in the background. Now, what it does here is that it gets three things. One being the status of a particular service, the other being the name of a service, third being the display name of a service out here. For example, there is a service called, let's say, a router service. The name of the service is called router. Status is what? Stopped. And it is telling what exactly is the service name, the full name of this particular service out here as such. Now, this is the default output of this particular command. The default output, when you say get service, it'll just go ahead by default, it will print everything out here as such. But using my PowerShell, what I want to do right now is that I only want to filter those services which are running and not stopped. I just want to understand what are all the services that are running in the background and they're not stopped out here as such. Now, what you can do is two methods that you can do. Firstly, you can say dollar services is equal to, what is dollar here? Services.
Variable.
It's a
A
variable,
variable.
right? So it's a variable that I declared. Earlier, what we did, we said dollar name is equal to Kiran. Now I'm telling dollar services is equal to get service, meaning whatever is the output that I'm getting here in that particular get service, please take all the output, store it in this particular, let's say, variable called what? Services. So I'll say dollar services. When I say dollar services, whatever that I'm getting here is being stored inside this particular variable. Now what I can do is, now this variable gets all the properties of the output, which means I can say dollar services dot status. If I do dollar services dot status, only the status is being displayed. If I say dollar services dot name, Only the name is being displayed right now. So what I can do is that now I can filter out all these things, and now this is an array. It's not just, let's say, a simple service, just a simple value. It's an array of service. So what I can do is, let's say that if I want to print out all the services which are only running and not stopped, I can say for each. I can say for each. I can put a loop called for each. I'll say for each item in dollar services. It can be anything, for each service in dollar service, for each item in dollar service, for each object in dollar services out here as such. I want all the services that are just running in a running state. I can say if dollar item dot status. I am not doing a dollar services dot status. Reason being, dollar services dot status is an array. Now I am only printing out what? The string, telling it is services dot status is equal to running. Then go ahead, write the name of that particular service. To write a name, what do I do? Write host. A write host statement right now. I'll say write host. I'll say name of the service is. How do I get a name of the service from this particular statement? Can anyone tell me how do I get the name of the
Item.
service?
Dollar service.
Dollar item.
Dollar?
Dollar of
Service.
dollar.
Dollar of
Dollar of
dollar.
dollar? Yes,
Services.
dollar of dollar. Yes. Dollar
Item.
what
Item.
here? Item, exactly.
Dollar of
Item
dollar.
dot name. Right. So now if I just go ahead and run this out, now I am getting the name of the service is something like AMD. The name of the service is something like this one. The name of the service is so on and so forth. These are all the services which seem to be, let's say, running. So I can say these are, because reason being, I'm telling dollar item dot status is equal to running. Only if it's running, then come inside this loop and getting this entire statement out here as such. This is one way of doing it. One
Kiran,
way
how
of
do we
doing
know this is array in the first place?
array. You can simply go ahead. The reason I'm telling this is an array is because this is not just one object. There are multiple things out here as such. But if you say services dot get type,
Then we will know. Okay.
it's an array.
Mhm.
Again, array is multiple things, right? So you can say services dot count also. There are 281 services that are running in the background out here as such.
Okay.
Out of which there are only a few services which are running. So array again, to just to make sure you want to know an array, want to know the data type of a particular variable, it is that particular variable dot get type, which will tell you whether this is an array, it's an object, and whatever it is. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes. So what I did is that I said services, I said get service, and for each item in that particular service, I'm saying item dot status is equal to running, and only if it's running, then go ahead and type something out here as such. This is one way of doing it, not the only way, one way of doing it. The other way is by using something called as a pipeline. What do you mean by a pipeline is this? If you run a command called get-service, the default output of a command is to print everything. And what I'm doing is I'm saving it in a variable, doing a for each loop out there and etc. One way of doing it, not the only way of doing it. What I can do the other way around is that take the entire output from this particular statement or from this particular command. Without having to print it, I can send this output to another command. Take the output from this one, send it as an input to another command. So I'm joining two different commands out here. The other command would be I want to filter this out. By using that particular status out there, I want to filter only those, let's say, services which are running. So what I can do here is to join two different commands. I can use something called as a pipe symbol. Pipe. So if you look at a keyboard, right? If someone who's, let's say, very new to this particular pipe symbol, this is the symbol that I'm using. I'm holding the shift button and I'm hitting this particular backslash. So you get a vertical line here. This is called as a pipe symbol. It's a pipe symbol out here as such. What I'm doing using a pipe symbol is this. I'm taking all the output from here. What is the output here? It is all these things, which is status, name, display name, and all these things. So I'm taking the output of all these things and I'm sending this as an input to a different command, and that different command will be a filtration. I'll say where hyphen object. I'm saying where object. I'm telling the status, or I'm telling where the status is equal to running. This is what I need to tell. So what I can do is that where object, open, close flower brackets, and this entire output, right, that you have, I'm filtering this entire output, and I want to iterate over all this output out here. For each is replaced by this particular thing called where object. I'm not doing a for each anymore. I'm just saying, okay, fine, where object, and here I would like to get the status which is running. So instead of again writing get service inside this particular bracket, I would represent the entire output by using something called as an alias. Alias is nothing but also known as, meaning you can have an alias name. The entire output can be represented by something called as $_. It's a predefined variable. $_ is a predefined variable out here. So now I can say $_ dot status. I can now get the properties of my output telling $_ dot status is equal to running. What this is going to do is this. If I run this right now, it's only printing the output of what? All the running services out here right now. So what it's doing is that it's going into each and every service, filtering it out, and it's only giving me the output of those particular services which are running in nature. That's it. Selling all these services are now running out here as such.
So can't we use if statement there? If condition.
You can use if condition. You can definitely use an if condition out here. That's what I did earlier.
Oh, in the
I
same.
did an if condition.
No,
Yes, the
not in
same
the
thing.
loop.
Sorry.
Instead of where about, where object. So can we use
Okay.
if statement there?
You can use if statement on a string, not an array. So you're processing an array out here, right?
Right.
So instead of doing, let's say, for each and then if statement out here, you cannot do a direct if here. The reason being, now you are processing not just one object, you are processing multiple objects at the same time. If condition works only with a string, not really with an array. So you need to, let's say, get a logic to convert your entire array into a string. That's where I put a where object out there.
So
And this
in also
statement
doesn't
is,
work, is it? In,
I'm
let's
sorry.
say, if you want to check within the array, can we also use in?
Yes, you can do in. You can say in or contains. But you're
in
processing
contains.
your entire array in that. Yes, you can do an in.
So how do we write the same statement in or contains? I mean, get hyphen service pipe.
See, get hyphen service where object and then $_ something contains
Contains.
something
Okay,
like,
instead of
let's say
equal.
that particular name. See, when you're doing a contains, right, I cannot do an equal to. I'll say
Yeah,
something like contains.
status contains. Yeah. Or
Status
status
contains. Or
status
status
in.
is, or status in. See, again, in becomes, let's say, something like the entire array out here, and you're telling in. And if you're telling in, you'll have to give your entire array here, which again
Okay.
becomes the the redundant logic out here. Instead of which, I'm just coming out with a simple equation telling I want is equal to running. Then I'm telling the status is equal to running out here. Now let's say that you want all the services that are only starting with a name called A. Let's forget about running. Let's say running is not there. You want all the services, whether stopped, whether stopped or started, just starting with a name like A. Here you have AMD, app, and all these things out, right? What I can do is that I can remove this out because this is only getting you running. Let's say $_ dot name. Now I want to, let's say, look at a name
Contains.
like what? Starting with A. Here I won't be using an equal to operator. If you do an equal to A, if you do this, let's see what is going to happen. No output.
Yeah.
Reason being, there is no service with a name called A. I want all the services with a name like A. With a name like A and not equal to A, for which instead of equal to, I'll say hyphen like, and I'll say A star. Star here is called as a wildcard statement, which means in place of that star, you can have anything. You can have B, you can have C, you can have a space, you can have, let's say, a special character. You can have anything, not a problem. And now if I just go ahead and run this out, do you see what I'm getting right now? I'm getting everything that starts with what? A, and after A, whatever it is, I don't mind. You have AJ, you have ALG, you have AMD, you have APP, you have all these things out. Let's say, for example, if you want to filter it down more, I only want the service which starts with app, APP. Let's say APP out here. Now execute this out. So you are doing a like condition, a like operator out here, telling it is APP out here, and you're getting a name like something. And I'm not really concerned about, let's say, whether the service is running or stopped. I'm only getting those services with APP out here as such. Again,
And
if you just remove this, sorry, just a second. If you just remove this out and just execute just the thing, you'll get all the services that are with A, starting with A, not, let's say, really concerned about what is, let's say, the next character that comes after it. Yes.
so
Someone had a question.
if I put contains, it doesn't qualifies this condition, right? I mean, it does. It
It
can pick
doesn't
any
really qualify the condition. Again, if you
because it
say
doesn't start with
contains,
A.
exactly.
It
If
can
it,
be.
if I,
It can start with B, but if it has
can
A,
we
it,
start with B? Yes. If it has A, now see if the contains here, right? It really doesn't work with this. Let's say something like or A star or something like this. Now I just have to, let's say, look at the syntax for contains. Let's see, PowerShell contains. Let's say PowerShell contains out here. Shell
capital
contains
C.
something like
Right?
shell.
Audio.
Yes. So it it just gives you a boolean value out here, but let's see why is it not giving, let's say, an output out here as such. Contains. Okay, I'll just look at this on why this operator is not really working, and I'll get back on this one. I'll have to do one example for contains before I go ahead and see why contains is not really working out here as such.
Okay. And we can also do and or ampersand, right? If we want to put more than one condition.
More than one condition, yes, that's something that
If
I'm
I
coming
want
back
to
to.
see any
Mhm.
service starting with A and running,
Yes, if we, let's say, yes, good question. If you want to see services that are starting with A and also running, what I'll do is I'll firstly put my condition in a bracket. This is the first condition, telling name like A. I'll say hyphen and second condition, which is also that service dot status is equal to running.
running. So it is
So now,
hyphen A and D.
yes,
I mean, it's not ampersand, right?
yes,
It will not
it's
take
not
a.
ampersand, it is hyphen A and D.
Okay.
It's hyphen A and D. And if I now, let's say, go ahead and run this out here, it's getting, or it's trying to match those two conditions, that firstly, service to start with A, getting all the services. Also, service status should be equal to running. If you say or here,
Either one. Yeah.
like A star, those things, or status is equal to running. So what it did is that firstly it took all the services that are starting with A and also all the statuses that are running. So it's doing either this or that. It's giving you everything out here as such, or everything that is running, and also everything. Yes, it gave you A, which is both running and stopped. So if you see A, right, it's both stopped and running. But those services just not starting with A are only running out here because it's coming with the second condition out here as such.
So what other logical operators are there? I mean, and or
And or contains, I mean, you have equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than. All these are, let's say, the comparison and the logical operators out here as such. Again,
not
the list of the
nor.
operators. So for example, operators in PowerShell, just go through this particular documentation about operators. So here, if you just let's say go here, selling assignment operators, comparison operators, logical operators, and or, not equal to, redirection operators, split operators, type operators, unitary operators, group operators, multiple things out here as such. And again, for each and every operator, if you just, let's say, go into, let's say, and understand what is a logical operator, just say about logical operator, just scroll down. It's going to give you examples on how it is really used out here, what it is really used, where it is really used, and also tells you, okay, fine, see comparison operators, about, if, and all these things out here as such. So I'll just give this particular documentation. We can have a look at this particular documentation out here as such.
Then
Yes.
A star gives it's a regular expression, right? Star
I'm sorry,
means
can you come again? I'm sorry,
yeah.
can you come again,
You
please?
wrote to A star, right? A star in the program. Yeah. Is it
I'm
a
sorry.
regular expression?
Just a second. My speakers are a little default. Just a second. Yes, can you please go ahead now?
Yeah, it's A star. You wrote right. It's a regular expression. Star indicates.
Star here is a wild card. When I say it's a wild card, after A, whatever it is, I'm not really concerned about. So star here is a special character, or it's a wild card, if you can call it in that way. And wild card here just tells you that after A, whatever it is, it can be B, it can be C, it can be a space, whatever it is, I'll print it out. That's what this expression really means out here as such.
Okay. Can you tell me the sum of the operators like star? I mean,
Star is a wild card, it's not an operator. Star here
oh,
is a wild card. If you want the operators out here, then you'll have to go inside this particular documentation on what are the operators that you can be using. Yes, any
Hello,
more
sir.
questions here? Go ahead, please.
Sir, in this scenario, dot name అక్కడ మనం స్ట్రింగ్ స్లైసింగ్ చేసుకోవచ్చు కదా సార్?
I'm sorry, can you come again, please? When you say string, what exactly do you mean here?
నేమ్ ఈజ్ ఎ స్ట్రింగ్ కదా సార్?
Yes, name is a string
నేమ్
in
ఈజ్
this case,
స్ట్రింగ్,
yes.
డాలర్ డాట్ నేమ్ డాట్ ఆల్ఫా ఓపెన్ బ్రాకెట్ 0, దట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ ఏ.
Dollar dot name dot. No, again, open bracket 0, it's a string. You cannot indent into a string. If it's an array, yes, I could have told that it's an array out there. But here you are representing a string, right? So when you are representing a string here, then you cannot do
అవును సార్.
something like this.
సార్ 0 ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ టు ఏ.
Sir, why do you want to put a 0? I mean, what is the logic of putting a 0 here?
నేమ్ కి ముందు ఫస్ట్ ఆల్ఫాబెట్ అనేది ఏ అనేది ఈక్వల్ అయితే, ఏ కి ఈక్వల్ అయితే అది మనం ఆ రిజల్ట్ ని తీసుకున్నట్టు కదా సార్?
Sir, this itself is doing that for you. Here the first alphabet is starting with A. See, if I put
అట్లా
something
కూడా
like this.
తీసుకోవచ్చు కదా అంటున్నాను నేను సార్.
No, sir, you cannot take it that way. Because you are indenting into an array. If you're telling it's a 0, you are going into the position of the array. You're not going into the position of a string. You're going into the position of the array out here as such. But if you want to do something like that, then it should be something, or the string operation should be something like this. Starts with A. Starts with something, okay. Starts with A. This is what you can do if you want to, let's say, just indent into that particular array out here.
But here we are giving in double quotes, right? A is a
Yes,
character, right? It's not a string.
A is a character. It has to start with A. In this case, it has to start with A, and the rest, whatever it is, you're not really concerned about that.
No. My question is, we don't differentiate between character and string. Both are same.
You don't differentiate between character and string, both are same. Yes, it's a string operation. You don't really
Okay.
differentiate between the character and string. Yes. So if you want to do something like that, then you have to, let's say, start your string operations out here, like dot starts with or dot contains, something like that.
So there is no typecasting, something like that, right? I think.
Typecasting, there is a typecasting, but I'm not really giving a typecasting out here. I do not really go into the concept of typecasting till now, right now.
Okay. We can do that, right? I mean, care of a something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any more questions here? Now let's see. If I just do a get service, I'm getting all the services. If I'm just going in and running the statement out, I'm getting all the services which are like A, and also yes, also running both of the conditions out here. I'm able to print all these things out here. Now let's say I don't want to print it. I want to save it in a file. I want to save all this output into a file. Let's say like a text file. What I can do is very simple. Let me go into a folder. Let's say this is our folder called PowerShell class 1. Copy the path. I want to save it inside this particular path. So I did a CD into the particular path, which change directory. And what I'll do is that now I can put one more pipe symbol here. I'm telling whatever is the output that you get till here, don't print it. Don't print it here, but I can do something like out hyphen file. Output into a file, which is called, either I can give the entire location here. I can give the entire file path here. Copy this out. Give the entire file path here. I can say / sample.txt. There is no file called sample.txt out here. It will create a new file. Either you can give the entire path, but if you are working in the same path, you can replace the entire path with something called dot. Because you're working in the same path right now, you don't have to give the entire path right now. You can say dot. And now if I just go ahead and execute this out, it did not give the output, but if I go back, it created a file called what? I got this. I can
So
save it also into a CSV file.
okay. So
Mhm.
one question, Kiran. So
Okay.
this redirection to a file. So
Yes.
can we also do greater than symbol and pipe it, something like that, or it doesn't allow? So
When
like
you say greater than, what exactly is the condition that we are looking for out here?
no, in Linux generally we do greater than and then we'll give the file name, right? So that
Yes,
will
yes,
do
yes.
the file redirection.
Okay. You are saying something like echo and all these things out, something like
Ha,
this.
greater than will actually move the file into content into the file
Let's see that. Let's
like
check
that.
whether it does that. Let's see test.txt. Let's see if this really works. It does.
Okay,
It
great.
does work. Normally we use an out file, but it does work. Meaning
So what?
you can either.
Greater than is the operator, Kiran.
I'm sorry. Can you come again, please?
I think greater than is the operator, whereas out.file is the function which used. Both are same.
It's a function, yes. The other way to indicate that is a greater than, meaning greater than is morely used in a Linux format, wherein you can just
Correct.
do an echo and then do a
Correct.
greater than into a file. Still works in
Correct.
PowerShell too.
And what file extension supports? TXT, CSV, doc.
TXT, CSV, .xls, .pdf. These are the file formats, or .json, .xml. These are the file formats wherein you can go ahead and print things out here.
.yaml.
.yaml is something that I haven't really come across. YML is a support that still PowerShell is missing. You have to, let's say, come up with your own functions. So YML is still which is in work in progress right now for PowerShell.
Oh, okay.
So serialization content. meaning JSON, YML, sorry, JSON, XML, all these things is something that you can go ahead and save it directly. HTML, something that you can go ahead and save this file directly in. YAML is not a serialization content. We'll talk about what a serialization and non-serialized content is out here as such. Yes. Any more questions here? Now, what I want to do here is that, see, we are still working with Windows PowerShell only. We understood what Windows PowerShell till here is. So instead of get hyphen service, right, I want to get all the resource groups in my Azure portal that are starting with a name like A, and which, let's say, are in a location like East US 2, and probably I want to delete them, or probably I want to modify them. So I have, let's say, hundreds of resource groups. I want to filter them out. So using these commands, or using similar commands like these, or using the same logic, I'll be able to do that out here as such. So that's what I want to get into, and I want to, let's say, use all these logics and go in and go inside, let's say, Azure out here as such. That's what I want to do. And what I want you all to do is that before coming to the next class, before going into the next class out here, let's see how can we apply our knowledge of PowerShell to a cloud called Azure. So before you do that, right, before you go ahead and do that, you have to make sure that your PowerShell terminal, meaning this is your PowerShell terminal that you see on my screen, talks to the Azure cloud. It has to talk to the Azure cloud out here. Right now, it can only talk to, let's say, Windows and etc. Meaning it can only talk to your Windows system. Good enough. But this is not sufficient for me to go ahead and, let's say, talk to Azure. In order to talk to Azure, very firstly, the version of PowerShell should be greater than or equal to 5.1. Again, how do we check the version of PowerShell? It is what? How do we check the version? PowerShell version?
PS version
Dollar
$PS
PS version table,
version table. Yeah.
which will give you the version of PowerShell, which is 5.1.22, something like this. Again, this gets incremented with regular Windows updates. So my version right now is 5.1. I'm good with this. And also the execution policy should at least be remote signed, unrestricted best. So if I say get hyphen execution policy, it's unrestricted. Two criteria you have to meet before you start working with, let's say, Azure PowerShell out here. After this, there is something called as module installation, meaning for your PowerShell to talk to, let's say, something called Azure, you need something called as Azure modules to be installed. Azure module needs to be installed out here. Again, how do I check? Firstly, how do I check whether modules are installed or not in my system? Is that go into your C drive of your system, go into program files. In my case, I'm using a 64-bit operating system. So I'm going into program files. If you're using a 32-bit operating system, going to program files x86. Here, I'll just go here. Just scroll down. You have a folder called Windows PowerShell. Go there. You have a folder called modules. Inside this, when you check your system, right, you will have probably these 4 folders or these 5 folders. Microsoft PowerShell, package management, pester, PowerShell, get, PS, readline. These 4, let's say, things that you might have. You need all these things to be present.
So these are present by default, right? With your OS.
With the OS, you will have these 4 things out here.
That is what is required. Right? 5. Okay.
This by the OS, this is something that you get. So do not delete this out. Once you delete, if you delete it out, your PowerShell will stop working. Your PowerShell won't really work anymore. So with the OS, you will get all these things. These 4 folders is something that you will get with the OS. The rest of the folders that you see is something you will you will get only after a module installation. Only you will get, all these things, something that you'll get only after a module installation. How do you install modules? Just go to this particular documentation. Say install PowerShell modules. Install AZ modules PowerShell. And this is where the documentation tells you is that please go ahead, check your version. Firstly, check your version, good enough. Set the execution policy, we've already done. Then run this command out. install hyphen module hyphen name space az. So this is the command that you need to run, called install hyphen module space hyphen name az scope current user repository ps gallery force. Just highlight this or just place a cursor here and just click on this particular button. What this is going to do is that this is going to go ahead and install all the modules in your system. Once that's done, please go back into your folder. You should be able to see all these things out here as such. This is the
Okay, this
preferred method.
needs
Go ahead, please.
internet access, right?
This needs internet access, meaning it's communicating to that particular gallery called PowerShell gallery, downloading all the modules, installing all the modules in your system. Even when you want to talk to the Azure cloud, you need an internet access. You need your server or you need your system to be, let's say, exposed to the internet when you want to talk to, let's
So
say, PowerShell and so forth.
right. So in some environments where
Mhm.
security is a prime concern,
Okay.
so internet is not exposed, right? So in that case, these
You will
modules,
have something like intranet in those environments. You will have an intranet,
yeah,
meaning your
internet
internal
is
network.
internal
Yes.
network.
So
We need
that's
to
the reason.
download and keep it as a repo.
Yes, you will need to download and keep it. That's the reason you have other installation options, meaning you can offline do offline installations out here.
Okay.
There's something called offline installation. That's what you said, right? In some environments, it's not possible to connect to what PowerShell
Yeah.
gallery. In that case, you can download
MSI is
something
there.
called as
Okay.
an MSI.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They'll give you an MSI out here, or you also have the entire save module option out here. So the MSI installation option is one way to go, or you can have a save module option out here as such. So again, if this is not working, in some cases I've observed, even though if you have an internet access, this might not work. I have observed cases where it doesn't work. In that case, please go to offline installation modules, say download this particular MSI. This will now, let's say, take you into, let's say, something like this. Just go down. So it's telling install or update the package using Windows MSI package. This will tell you, or this will take you into something called as a GitHub page. So if you go here, these are all the modules that are available. Just scroll down. It's telling you these are all the modules which are available for you to go ahead and download out. And in here, you have something called assets, 9 assets out here. Please go ahead and download one of these packages. Preferable, go ahead and download your MSIs. So this is 64-bit MSI. If I download this, right, I'll get an installer. Just double click on this installer and you should be able to get these modules. So either the online installation package, which is, let's say, something like direct command, go ahead, hit this out, should be able to install it out. In some cases, your systems might not be exposed to the internet, but you can go ahead, download this MSI package out here, keep it readily available on the system, and then install it. So any one thing is good enough out here for us.
Right. So PowerShell works only has modules of Azure, right? It doesn't work for other clouds.
It doesn't work for other clouds. Honestly speaking, I haven't worked on other clouds using PowerShell modules out here. I haven't really worked with AWS out there as such extensively using PowerShell. We normally go with shell scripting out here. So I haven't really done installation of AWS, but I'm sure you will be able to, let's say, go ahead and install those modules, but not on PowerShell ISE. You cannot do it on PowerShell ISE. Reason being, this is only for a Windows operating system. You have additionally something called PowerShell 7. So if I go and do PowerShell right on my system, I have something called PowerShell 7 out here. This is a PowerShell core, which means that you
Okay.
can install this both on Windows and Linux. So once you install it on Linux operating system, using this particular terminal, you can also run your Linux commands. So you can have a combination of both PowerShell and Linux, and also, let's say, talk to a cloud like, let's say, AWS or GCP.
Okay.
So again, if you want to install that particular PowerShell, just say PowerShell core install. And this will give you, let's say, that particular package, MSI package, and etc. You can go ahead and install this out here as such. So the expectation here, guys, is that before you come down to tomorrow's session, please go ahead and install something called as this particular module. Just go to install PowerShell module out here. Just run this particular command out. See how it works out. Tell me what are the errors that you kind of get out here as such. Go please. Yes. No, sir. The last 4 is already there. It's already there. The remaining is what I need. All this is what I need. Plus the last 4 or the last 5 also. The last 4 is already there in your system. But these are all the modules that you need. So yes, you will need to do a complete installation of your module. So which modules are working in here? That depends upon which system that you're using. Normally, when your PowerShell is greater than 5.1, every module will work on your system. So you can just go ahead, check what is your version, and once you know about your version, you can go ahead and run this particular command. Yes, so before you come down to the class tomorrow, please install this out. And tomorrow's session, we'll just look at how do you log into, let's say, Azure portal, what are the basic operations and etc. And from day after tomorrow, we'll come down to the theory part. Again, we'll go into networking and etc. And on Saturdays and Sundays, we'll look into the automation part of it. So on a Friday, so before we go into Saturdays and Sundays, right? On Fridays, I'll just make sure to remind you all. I'll remind you all what do you need to revise so that you can be ready for the automation class out here as such. And on a Sunday, I'll start giving you assignments so that you can take the week of time, you can work on those assignments, and you can see how you can improvise on that particular PowerShell part of, let's say, the syllabus out here as such.
Then I
Yes, any
have one doubt.
questions? Go ahead, please.
To be honest, actually, I'm confused why we are installing all these services in our local desktop. That is one question.
Okay. When you say services, what is the service that you mean here on your local desktop? What is the service? You can go off camera. You don't need to be on camera out here. When you say services, what are the services do you mean that you want to install on the system?
Services means all whatever you are downloading right now, right?
So I downloaded just a module right now. So this is the only module that I'm downloading right now. So if this module is not there, you won't be able to communicate with the Azure cloud. So our intention is to go make sure that to let's say take all our knowledge of PowerShell and implement it towards the Azure cloud out here. In this case, what we are doing right now is that we are doing a module installation so that we get all the required commands which can help us to communicate with the Azure to apply PowerShell onto Azure cloud out here. That's the, let's say, end use, and that's the reason we are installing the modules out here as such. Does it answer your question? Okay, that's it from my end today, guys. Please install these modules, and in tomorrow's session, we'll, let's say, continue from there. Thank you and have a good day ahead. Thanks, guys.